The last 2 weeks have been hectic and eventful. In one part, it was a morning and a goodbye to the old. In another part, it was a welcome and a thanksgiving for the new. And in the most traumatizing one of it, it was a fight for my life. I would not be elaborating further on this, but just know that the battle scars are healing. There are lessons to be learned and there are stories to be told. And for that reason, we'll talk about the past and how it informs the future. So, look, by the time you see this video, the headlines might have moved on. The United States of America arrested the sitting president of a sovereign nation. And for 48 hours, the internet were shocked. Color me shocked as well, because if you color me shocked, maybe my own would be crocodile brown and maybe hippopotamus green. You can even say indigo yellow. People were screaming, they were shouting in caps locks. International law, sovereignty. Even South Africa said the Security Council needs to do something about it. They were acting like the system had broken. But if you were shocked, it just means that you haven't been reading the release note. Because I look at the release log, and to be honest, this wasn't an accident. It was standard operating procedure. But today, I don't just want to talk about Venezuela. I want to talk about system architecture. I want to look at the philosophy of power. Because until you understand how the system is wired, you will always be its victim. Let's look at the raw data first. Everyone thinks sovereignty protects them, but in the US operating system, that code does not exist. 1989, Operation Just Cause. The US invaded Panama. They sent in 26,000 troops to arrest Emmanuel Noriega. They shipped him to Miami. That was the beta test. 1983, Grenada. They invaded a tiny island because the government aligned itself with Cuba. The rest of the world called it a regime change, but the US called it debugging. 2003, Iraq. We all know this one. This is not this is not news to us. They invaded Iraq for weapons that do not exist. They stayed to restructure the Middle East. And maybe the restructuring looks like oil, but who are we? We do not know. You see the pattern? We aren't watching a reaction to the crisis in Venezuela. We are watching the precise execution of a 40-year-old script being played in real time. Why does this happen? Is the US just evil? In system thinking, we don't look for evil, we look for optimization. There is a philosophy in international relations called realism. It says the world is chaotic, there is no global police. So the biggest system, the Leviathan, must consume the smaller systems to protect its own security. From a product perspective, the US empire is optimizing for one metric: total dominance. If Venezuela steps out of the line, they are the bug. If Iraq sells oil in euros, they are the glitch. The system isn't acting out of morality, it acts out of physics. The larger mass absorbs smaller mass. When we cry about fairness, we are bringing moral arguments to an engineering problem. And how do they enforce this? How do they arrest someone in another country without technically being at war? It is called extraterritorial jurisdiction. In psychology, it is called Panopticon. In psychology, Panopticon is a prison where you can't see the guard, but you know they are watching, so you behave. The US has turned the global financial system to a digital panopticon. If your action touches the US dollar, the US internet, the SWIFT banking system, you are subject to the United States law. Think about the psychology of that. To survive in the modern world, you must use their infrastructure, you must use their technology, you must use the dollar. But the moment you use their tool, you accept their terms and conditions. We are trapped in a system where the convenience of the dollar is the chain that binds us. To Washington, D.C., every financial log is a jurisdiction map. And don't get me started with the UN. The sociology here is fascinating because why would 193 countries come together, sit in a room, and pretend that they have the power when they don't? In design, we call it vanity metric. It looks good on the dashboard, but in reality, it does nothing. The UN is what you call a political theater. It acts as a semblance of order to the rest of the world. It is a feel good organization to make people calm that there is order, there is rules. But if you look at the org chart, the Security Council has 5 permanent members and all with veto powers. And guess what? The US is one of them. And here's the design flaw: the US has a kill switch. Let's say all the world come together and say they want to issue a condemnation on an action of the United States. All the United States needs to do is raise one hand, and that veto is deleted. We built a justice system where the accused is also the head judge. It is a logical fallacy. The UN isn't a government, it is a user interface designed to hide the back end of pure power. So let's bring this back home. I'm talking about Venezuela because I am terrified for Africa. We are currently in total hell because we have refused to build systems that actually work. In psychology, there is Maslow's hierarchy of need. The baseline is safety. Africa wants to talk about trade and innovation, the top of the pyramid, but we have zero architecture of safety. If they can fly into Caracas, what stops them from enforcing American law in Lagos or in Kinshasa? We scream independence, but independence requires leverage. We don't have the military architecture, we don't have the financial wall, we don't have a unified cultural operating system. We have 54 separate files that can be deleted one by one. We are living in a house with no doors and we are screaming, oh, privacy, privacy. We love to keep pretending that we are players in the global game. But looking at this arrest, can I be honest? The Security Council shouldn't exist. It is a legacy bug. But begging them to change won't work. What we need to build, what my generation needs to build, is a system that values reciprocity. We need to design a new backend. We need to design a system where the US needs us as much as we need it. That is building a unified African economy that is too big to fail. That means building a military alliance that is too big to attack. You don't get respect by asking for it in a speech in the UN. You get respect by building a wall that is too big to climb. Until we fix our own architecture, sovereignty remains a myth. This is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. The gap in the system, the bug that we accept as a feature. If you're new here, I am Adeyomi Lawal. I am a product manager, I am a thinker. I see the world in systems and I feel it in shades of blue. I don't have a solution yet, but we can start by reading the code. This is my rough draft. Let's talk in the comments.